The sleek modern glass skyscraper of Sterling and Combing gleamed under the morning sun, a towering symbol of corporate success. Inside, pristine marble floors stretched across the vast lobby, polished to perfection, reflecting the steady stream of professionals bustling through the halls. The air smelled of fresh coffee and ambition, a scent that Amanda Carter thrived on. Amanda was the embodiment of corporate success, sharp, confident, and impeccably dressed in designer suits that matched her no-nonsense demeanor. At only 32, she had climbed the ranks at Sterling and Cone with ruthless efficiency, earning the respect of her superiors and the envy of her colleagues. But beneath her polished exterior lay an arrogance that made her feared rather than admired. She had little patience for those she deemed beneath her, especially the janitorial staff, whose presence she barely acknowledged. Daniel Brooks, on the other hand, was a man of few words. Dressed in his navy blue uniform, he moved through the hallways quietly, performing his duties with diligence. He had been with the company for nearly a year, often working late hours to ensure that the offices remained spotless. He wasn't just a janitor, he took pride in his work. But to Amanda, he was invisible. That is, until she decided to make an example out of him. It happened on a Monday morning, just as Amanda was stepping out of the elevator, coffee in hand, discussing an upcoming deal with a group of colleagues. She was in the middle of a boastful remark about her latest professional triumph when she bumped into Daniel, who was mopping the hallway floor. The coffee cup slipped from her grasp, spilling onto her expensive heels and splattering across the floor. A gasp rippled through the corridor as everyone turned to witness the scene. Amanda's face twisted in irritation as she looked down at her stained shoes, then up at Daniel with pure contempt. "Unbelievable!" she scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Can you at least watch where you're going? Or is even that too difficult for you?" Daniel opened his mouth to apologize, but Amanda wasn't interested in his words. She rolled her eyes and turned to her colleagues with an exaggerated sigh. "And this is why some people stay janitors their whole lives," she said, laughing. The others chuckled uneasily, some shifting uncomfortably at her cruel remark. Daniel, however, simply nodded and continued mopping, his expression unreadable. What Amanda didn't realize was that her words would come back to haunt her, sooner than she ever could have imagined. Amanda Carter barely registered the accident as her overpriced caramel macchiato splattered across the floor. The moment the hot liquid touched her designer heels, her frustration spiked. A deep scowl crept across her face as she turned to Daniel, who stood there, mop in hand, his expression neutral. "You have got to be kidding me," Amanda scoffed, lifting her foot slightly to inspect the damage. "Do you even pay attention to what you're doing?" Daniel glanced at the spilled coffee and then at Amanda, his eyes calm but unreadable. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't—" "Sorry?" Amanda cut him off, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Yeah, that really helps. Instead of standing there, how about you actually do your job and clean this mess up?" She stepped back, shaking her foot slightly, as if the very idea of being near the spill was beneath her. Around her, a small group of employees had gathered, their conversations pausing as they witnessed the unfolding scene. Some exchanged uneasy glances, while others, especially those who sought Amanda's approval, chuckled at her condescending tone. Daniel remained silent, already moving to clean up the spill, his motions practiced and efficient, but Amanda wasn't done. "This is exactly why people like you stay stuck in jobs like this," she continued, crossing her arms. "No ambition, no attention to detail, just a mop and a paycheck. Must be nice not having to think too hard at work." A couple of people in the group chuckled nervously, but others shifted uncomfortably. Even those who admired Amanda's sharp business acumen found her words unnecessarily cruel. Daniel kept his focus on the task, methodically wiping away the mess as if her words hadn't cut through the air like a knife. His face remained calm, his posture unwavering. He had heard insults before, from people who thought a title and a tailored suit gave them power over others. It didn't bother him, at least not in the way Amanda assumed it should. "Unbelievable," she muttered one last time before turning sharply on her heels, flipping her hair over her shoulder as she marched off. The crowd slowly dispersed, a few people murmuring about the incident under their breath. But as Daniel wrung out the mop, his expression remained unreadable. Because while Amanda walked away, convinced she had put a man in his place, she had no idea what was coming next. The atmosphere at Sterling and Comey buzzed with anticipation. An unexpected company-wide meeting had been scheduled, and whispers of a major announcement filled the air. Employees speculated about a potential merger or restructuring, but no one knew for sure. Amanda Carter, as usual, arrived at the conference hall exuding confidence, dressed in a sharp navy blue blazer and heels that clicked with authority. She took her usual seat near the front, expecting to hear another corporate spiel from the CEO. But the moment Richard Langley, the longtime CEO, stepped onto the stage with a grim smile, Amanda's confidence wavered. Something was different. "Ladies and gentlemen," Langley began, clearing his throat, "it is with mixed emotions that I announce my departure as CEO of Sterling & Co. I've made the decision to step down as part of a new acquisition that will take this company to even greater heights." The room filled with murmurs. Amanda furrowed her brow. Acquisition? By whom? Sterling & Company was already a powerhouse in the industry. Langley raised a hand, signaling for silence. "I'm pleased to introduce the new owner and CEO of this company, someone with a vision for the future and a deep understanding of leadership." He paused. Daniel Brooks." Amanda's heart nearly stopped. The name echoed in her ears, but it didn't make sense until he stepped onto the stage. Gone was the navy blue janitor's uniform. Instead, Daniel Brooks stood before them in a crisp, tailored charcoal suit, exuding the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove. His hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with the kind of composure that came from experience, not just in business, but in life. Amanda's breath hitched as the realization sank in. The janitor she had humiliated days ago was now the CEO. "Thank you, Richard," Daniel said, his voice steady. "It's an honor to be here, not as part of the cleaning crew, but as the leader of this company." His gaze flickered over the crowd, momentarily locking onto Amanda. She felt exposed, her usual poise faltering. He continued, "For those who don't know me, I built and sold multiple successful companies before stepping away from the business world. Personal reasons led me to take time off, to work from the ground up again, to see what truly drives a company's success. And now I'm here to lead Sterling & Company forward." Amanda swallowed hard. The man she had dismissed as beneath her now held her future in his hands. Amanda sat frozen in her chair, her mind spinning as Daniel Brooks, the man she had humiliated just days ago, stood before the entire company as their new CEO. It felt surreal, like a cruel twist of fate she never could have anticipated. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, hushed voices carrying between employees. People who had witnessed the hallway incident just days ago exchanged knowing glances. Amanda could feel their eyes darting toward her, their barely concealed smirks and raised eyebrows. She forced a tight smile, straightened her posture, and pretended nothing was wrong. He wouldn't hold a grudge over something so trivial, right? After all, he hadn't even responded when she mocked him. He just kept mopping the floor. Maybe he had already forgotten. Still, a cold sweat prickled at the back of her neck. As the meeting progressed, Daniel spoke with authority and a calm confidence that only made Amanda's anxiety worse. He didn't acknowledge their past encounter, not once. He didn't call her out, didn't throw her insults back at her. Instead, he simply watched. That was worse. Every now and then, his gaze would settle on her, assessing, measuring, but unreadable. Amanda felt like she was under a microscope, every breath, every movement scrutinized. She tried to act normal, nodding at the appropriate moments, clapping when the rest of the room clapped. But she wasn't fooling anyone. The whispers continued as the meeting wrapped up. As people stood to leave, Amanda caught snippets of hushed conversations. "Can you believe it? She treated him like dirt." "Karma's fast, huh?" Bet she's panicking right now. She clenched her jaw and marched toward the exit, but the murmurs followed her like shadows. Her mind raced with possible outcomes. Would Daniel fire her? Demote her? Humiliate her in front of the entire company the way she had humiliated him? The thought made her stomach twist. As she reached the door, she felt a presence behind her. Turning slightly, she saw Daniel standing a few feet away, speaking with the department heads. His expression remained neutral, but the moment their eyes met, something flickered in his gaze. Recognition. He knew. He remembered. And he was waiting. Amanda swallowed hard. For the first time in her career, she was no longer in control. The tension in the conference room was palpable as Sterling and Company's leadership team gathered for their first meeting under Daniel Brooks's leadership. Amanda sat stiffly in her usual chair, trying to maintain her composure. She had spent the last few days walking on eggshells, unsure of what Daniel planned to do with her. As he took his seat at the head of the table, Daniel wasted no time. He laid out his vision for the company, one built on integrity, innovation, and most notably, respect for every employee, regardless of position. Success is not just measured in revenue, he said, his gaze sweeping across the table, but in how we treat the people who make this company run, from the executives in this room to the janitors who keep it clean. No role is insignificant. Amanda's stomach twisted. Though he never called her out by name, she could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. The message was clear. He hadn't forgotten. As the meeting ended and employees filed out, Amanda knew she had to act. Letting out a slow breath, she approached Daniel. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her voice softer than usual. "May I speak with you privately?" He studied her for a moment before nodding. "Of course. My office." Amanda followed him into the sleek modern office that had once belonged to Richard Langley. As the door shut behind her, she forced a smile. "Listen, Daniel." She hesitated, correcting herself. "Mr. Brooks, I just wanted to say, I realize I may have been out of line the other day, and I hope there are no hard feelings." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "No hard feelings?" he repeated. His voice was calm, but there was something in his tone that made Amanda's palms sweat. "Right," she continued quickly. "I respect your position, and I'd love the opportunity to show that I can be a team player." A small smile touched Daniel's lips, but not the forgiving kind. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, "because I have the perfect assignment for you." Amanda's relief was short-lived as he slid a folder across the desk. "You'll be overseeing a new company-wide initiative on workplace appreciation," he explained. "To truly understand the value of every role, you'll be working closely with the janitorial staff for the next month." Amanda's breath caught in her throat. She was about to get a very real lesson in humility. Amanda Carter had never scrubbed a floor in her life. On the first day of her new assignment, she stood in the janitor's break room, wearing a plain uniform, a mop in one hand and a bucket in the other. The room smelled of cleaning chemicals and industrial soap, a stark contrast to her usual world of espresso machines and boardrooms. The janitors she had once ignored now stood beside her, watching with mild amusement as she hesitated, unsure where to start. "This ain't the kind of job where you just supervise, sweetheart," one of the older janitors, Marge, said with a knowing smirk. "Get to scrubbing." Amanda bit back a retort, forcing a tight smile instead. She could do this. It was just temporary, but as the hours dragged on, frustration set in. Mopping floors was exhausting. Cleaning bathroom stalls was even worse. She hadn't realized how physically demanding the job was. The constant bending, lifting, and scrubbing left her sore in places she hadn't known existed. By the end of the first week, Amanda's manicured nails were chipped, her arms ached, and for the first time, she felt truly invisible. People she had worked alongside for years barely acknowledged her. They walked past without a glance, too absorbed in their own world, just as she had done to Daniel and the rest of the janitorial staff. It hit her hard. By the third week, something changed. She found herself talking to the janitors, learning their stories. Marge had worked here for 20 years, raising 3 kids. Luis was saving up to open his own small business. Megan was putting herself through college at night. They weren't just janitors, they were people. People with aspirations, struggles, and dignity. One evening, Amanda stayed late to help Marge finish up. As they put away supplies, she hesitated before speaking. "I owe you all an apology," she said quietly. "I was awful to you. I looked down on you, and I had no right." Marge studied her for a moment before giving a small nod. "Takes guts to admit that." The next day, Amanda met with Daniel in his office. "I get it now," she told him sincerely. "Respect shouldn't depend on status. I was wrong." Daniel studied her for a long moment before nodding. "I believe you," he said, but remember, respect isn't something you show only when it benefits you. It's a standard, always." And this time, Amanda understood. Months had passed since Amanda Carter's unexpected lesson in humility, and the transformation in her was undeniable. She no longer walked through the office with the same air of superiority, nor did she ignore those she once considered beneath her. Instead, she greeted everyone, from executives to janitors, with genuine respect. Her time working alongside the janitorial staff had been eye-opening, and though it had started as a punishment, it had become the most valuable experience of her career. She understood now that leadership wasn't just about power and prestige. It was about how you treated those around you. Under Daniel Brooks' leadership, Sterling & Combing experienced a cultural shift unlike anything the company had seen before. The rigid hierarchies that once dictated behavior began to soften. Employees at every level were encouraged to voice their ideas, and an emphasis was placed on workplace dignity. Daniel introduced mentorship programs, employee appreciation initiatives, and policies that ensured every worker, no matter their position, was treated fairly. Productivity soared, employee morale improved. The company didn't just survive under its new leadership, it thrived. Amanda, now a more grounded and respected leader, found herself excelling in ways she hadn't before. With her newfound understanding of people, she led her teams with empathy rather than intimidation. She earned real respect, not through fear, but through trust and kindness. One afternoon, as she walked through the halls, she saw Luis, one of the janitors she had worked with, excitedly discussing his plans to open his own business. Instead of brushing past, she stopped to chat, offering him advice on business strategies. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Later that day, Daniel called Amanda into his office. "I've been watching you," he said with a small smirk. "You've changed." Amanda exhaled. "I had to." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Good, because leadership isn't just about running a business. It's about the people who keep it running. If you don't respect them, you don't deserve to lead." Amanda nodded. She finally understood. As she walked out of his office, she no longer felt the anxiety that had gripped her weeks ago. Instead, she felt something entirely different: pride. She had fallen, but she had learned. And now she was finally the leader she had always pretended to be.